Joining me today is the premier Indianapolis-based communications expert specializing in body language and nonverbal skills training. In addition to executive coaching and corporate training, she is also a featured communications expert on numerous media outlets and provides commentary and analysis on a number of topics, including human lie detection and political body language. Welcome to the Brassy Broadcast, Lisa Mitchell.
I could not think of anywhere else I would rather be right now.
That makes me so happy.
And there's going to be so much giggling.
I know. This is going to be maybe the most fun podcast ever.
Yes. Do I get like a ribbon or a star or a smelly sticker or something at the end?
I will totally find you a sticker.
That's wonderful. Best day ever.
So as soon as I decided that I wanted to focus this podcast on exploring content creation and communication and engagement, you were one of my first calls to be a guest because not only are you the body language expert, but you've really upped your game over the course of the past year in ways that you're creating content, communicating, and engaging with your audience as a business owner.
Yeah, it's been a great year.
And you're just super fun and one of my favorite people to hang out with. And I'm really sorry, dear audience member, that we didn't have the microphones rolling for like the first 30 minutes we were hanging out around the kitchen island, because that is where the magic truly happens.
Those sessions are pretty special. They're pretty serendipitous at some of the things that smack us around while we're up there talking.
Yeah. So we're going to bring that vibe down here into the studio. But I want to know, first off, what got you into body language?
Well, there's like the story I tell that's like suitable for public consumption. And then there's like the real story, which was basically I wandered around completely unaware and oblivious for a number of years, very self-focused and not really paying much attention to what people were literally screaming my direction non-verbally. And that worked out really well. It ended in a failed business and a bankruptcy and a divorce.
Right on. Good work.
Yeah. So that kind of spurred me into the whole, maybe you should clue into your life a little bit more and think about how you're showing up, and then pay attention to how other people are showing up, and then maybe formulate an informed response when something isn't exactly what you think it is. So that's the real version. Like I got smacked around. It cost a lot of money, cried a lot, like ugly cried a lot during that time, and decided I wasn't really interested in doing that again. And so I started looking for new ways to clue in and to be aware and engage in my life a little bit more, because being head down and being busy and just showing up and hoping for your best every day just to survive the day was not a good sustainable game plan for me.
Yeah.
So I had to clue in a little bit. So I started reading and researching and listening to podcasts and just getting best practices from other people of how are you showing up successfully and engaged in your life? Because I have a daughter, and at the time she was very young. And hopefully most of that can be undone in therapy at some point later in her life. But I don't want her to develop my pattern of being oblivious. So for me, it became like, okay, clue in, be intentional about it. Don't just hope that you figure people out. Like learn some skills, like get your shit together, learn some skills, clue in, and show up in your life. And so through that, I found actually a podcast of all things. I found Vanessa Van Edwards, and she's the chief behavioral investigator at a human behavior research lab called Science of People. And I just thought that was one of the most interesting, fascinating, informing hours of my life. And it was really a discovery for me to know, okay, there is an entire science-based process. I don't have to create it. It's already out there, and the research is sound, and it's like cause and effect, right? You clue in, you see this. When you understand what that means, then you can respond in a way that gets you the outcome that you want. Like it's systemic. It's a process. It's not magic. It's not, some divine giftedness, although I think discernment is definitely helpful. In really being accurate about it. But for me, I was like, like this is a thing. Like I could actually, and I love to study, and I'm a total science dork, and I love data. Like I could actually hack the system for my own benefit and really start understanding why people are doing the things they're doing, how I can impact it for favorable outcomes, how I can let them know that I care and I'm empathetic and I'm engaged, because I thought I was all of those things, but I did a really bad job of showing people. And by detriment, to my own detriment, by behaving that way, people thought I didn't care, or thought I wasn't clued in, or thought I was self-absorbed, or it was just bad.
Yeah.
So I found a set of tools that could fix that. I kind of felt like obligated, like know better, do better.
Oh, yeah, completely.
Yeah. And I don't ever really just do something kind of. Like I go full, like face plant head first into the deep end and hope to God I surface again when I'm done cramming all the stuff in my brain. So,
I think that's why we're friends.
Right. And it takes one to know one, right?
Yeah.
I know we have a similar methodology. So when I surfaced, I came up with a brand new set of skills to better to understand myself and my relationships, but then help other people also engage more fully and productively in their lives. Yeah. So that's my mission now.
I love it.
Yeah.
We are definitely on that same kind of mission, I think, of empowerment and teaching and like helping people figure out, because I swear to God, there's something new to figure out every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've had the bankruptcy, the failed business, and then you're like, holy crap, I'm obviously going to have to invest money in myself.
Yeah.
How did you work through, was there any like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I should take this risk. Like, how did you kind of navigate all of that?
And that's still kind of every day.
Yeah.
I think that, well, first of all, don't give me too much credit. I took my ball and went home and hid from entrepreneurship and self-exploration for about, well, gosh, how long was that? A couple of years. I went back and just holed up in my corporate job and was like, I'm never doing anything ever again on my own because I suck and I'm a failure. So I stayed in that space and worked for somebody else and collected a paycheck and didn't at all even want to pursue my purpose because it was scary and meant challenge and change, and that was bad. Yeah. And then, as the divine spirit does frequently, put a conviction on my heart that, you were meant for more. Like, I did not put you here in this moment on this planet to coast.
Yeah.
Like, get off your ass and go like help some people. Get over yourself, just get over yourself and start like, it was kind of like, I don't care what you do, just go do something.
Yeah.
Was how it was perceived. And so I got that conviction really strongly put upon me. And I was like, then it came into like intake mode. So it's podcasts and it's books and it's engaging in communities and taking courses and, trying to figure out, like, I knew I was meant to do something, but I hadn't found my thing yet at that point. That was before I landed on body language. So I was just like building a system and then waiting for the thing to come to me, to plug in. And so there was a lot of friction and frustration. And through that, like the first major like course I signed up for outside of my college education was $2,000. And at the time that I'm a single mom and mortgage and not having the best financial track record recently. And that was a ton of money. Like I got sweaty and almost wanted to throw up. Like as I was signing up for the stuff, I was like, and it comes back to that whole worth question, right? Like, it's for me. Like I would pay that for my daughter. I would pay that for somebody else in a heartbeat if I thought it would really level her up. But this is just for me. So it was like that led me down another rabbit hole of unpacking, like, what are my limiting beliefs around my worth and why am I tripping over the scarcity mindset when everything I've ever needed has been provided? I mean, even in the midst of like the worst, like going to bankruptcy court day, I still had a roof over my head. We still had food. We still had money to enjoy life. Like I've never lived in true scarcity by the grace of God. But I have operated like I've lived in true scarcity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I don't know why we do that.
It's a lot of it's generational. A lot of it's messaging around how our parents talked about it. Some of it's even like further back. Like it's just emotions and limiting beliefs and things we carry from generations far past that it's kind of like that DNA memory. Yeah. Where we pick up the mindset of the people who've come before us and just kind of carry, even never having walked through that experience firsthand, we still live as if. So it takes a lot of like reprogramming, like clearing out those beliefs and replacing them with things that are true. Mm-hmm. And that's that's a whole nother challenge, is figuring out what's true about you right now. Like core level, who am I showing up as every day?
Well, and I think that's one of the things that you kind of explore with your body language stuff.
Yeah, I do a lot of that with executive coaching, because my whole challenge to my clients is, how are you showing up in a room? Mm-hmm. That's the first thing I ask them. Because we don't ever, first of all, ever think about how we're showing up. We just walk in. Right. We aren't intentional about it. We don't think about the outcome that we want. We don't think about maybe what filters other people are using to receive us in. We just show up and expect that we're going to land exactly, like people are going to perceive us exactly as we intend. And it never happens. Like even when you're walking into a room full of people who know you, mm-hmm. they only know you through their filter. So they're still seeing you differently than you think they are. And that's such a new concept to really almost everyone. Like people that are completely brilliant and very socially aware still, mm-hmm. that 5 seconds of before I walk in, how do I want to be perceived and what's my outcome that I'm seeking? It doesn't happen. We don't pause and give ourselves that space to really be like, okay, I'm going to set myself up to get that outcome by how I walk into the room.
So what do we need to be aware of before, I would say even before we, like if we're going into a meeting, before we even get out of the car?
Yeah, it really starts about showing up confident, because if you can show up confident, not acting confident, but actually intrinsically feeling confident, mm-hmm. then you, like science and studies have shown that you actually, when someone walks in and behaves in a confident manner, there's actually like this halo effect that happens. So everything about that person is perceived more favorably. Like the outfit that they're wearing, the mm-hmm. material that they're talking about, the, their accent, if they have, like everything is perceived higher. Like there's a study that was done by Professor Stephen Sussy where he scripted 2 identical college courses, and the textbooks were the same, the material, everything was exactly the same, except in one class he taught in high power body language. So lots of gestures, walked in confident, power pose before he came in, walked in, owned the room, was dynamic in presentation. The other one, he put himself in low power body position. So he actually raised his cortisol, raised his stress before he walked in, and then taught it in low power, like maintained a low power body presence throughout the class. At the end of the semester, the class that received the high power body delivery actually rated everything higher, including the textbook.
Really?
Yes. Same textbook.
Yeah.
Same material, same presentation, same everything. But because of how it was delivered, mm-hmm. everything got swept up into that positive perception.
Wow.
Yeah.
So be aware.
Be aware. Be intentional.
Yes. Be intentional.
Don't hope people see you the way you want them to. Like make sure they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So see, that's why I'm so excited you're here today. So we can completely geek out on all of this stuff.
Yes.
Because I always just, like every time we talk, I just always learn a boatload of stuff. Okay. So I'm very excited to share it with everyone else.
Because you have your 1,000 voices, right? Like right. This year you're going to, and I am, I don't know if I'm voice 1, but I'm a voice.
You were voice given. 1 for this year.
Yes. Yes. I feel like if it goes into an IPO at some point, I'm going to really bank on how that rolls out. It worked for Snapchat.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm voice 1 and that's your mission. And I have a similar mission where my single purpose in the work that I do is to help people show up as their most confident, clued himself in any situation. Mm-hmm. And I want that for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. Yeah. So for me, I've had to broaden my scope of how does that happen?
Right.
Because it doesn't sound like something that should happen mm-hmm. for someone like me. Right. Someone
right.
like me, that limiting belief in quotes, right?
Exactly.
Because why would I be exceptional?
Right.
Why would I have mass positive impact? I'm just me.
Is there nothing special about you?
Right. Well, ask my mom. She'll tell you lots of things. But,
right.
But in my head, I have to call Mom, why do you love me? No, she's really great about that. Always has been, even when I was hard to love. So I'm lucky. I'm lucky that she rolled through that with me. But so it's like, how do you position yourself for mass impact? And it's not about, I have the podcast now, thanks to you. Mm-hmm. like really thanks to you.
Yay.
That's super fun. Shiny Things is a living, breathing in the world on iTunes legit thing.
And I'm going to put the links to that in the show notes.
Yeah. It's not nearly as good as this one though, so be advised.
Oh, but it is. But it is because I've heard it.
Good.
Well, and so one of the things, one of many things I want to get to today, and I have a feeling there's going to probably be like part 2, part 3, part 4 of Lisa's recurring visits back to the show. But one of the things that I loved, like especially during the course of the election, was reading your LinkedIn posts and watching your TV appearances, because I thought it was such a brilliant way to actually demonstrate the work that you do using something that absolutely had the country captivated, because it was so real, because, you know, you couldn't turn on the news or hell, even scroll through your Facebook feed without commentary on, you know, the candidates. So what has happened since that? Because I feel like you really struck a nerve, and maybe that kind of helped expand your reach.
Yeah. Well, bit. I had a mentor of mine that gave me the piece of advice that the more you can add value to to something timely and topical, the quicker you'll be established as a credible expert. Mm-hmm. And I was watching the people that I admire inject themselves into the conversation with great information and insight, and not just an opinion. I mean, anybody with Facebook can have an opinion and shout it from the rooftops. Right. They shouldn't, but they do. But to really take what your area of expertise, and then provide evaluation or provide information or provide perspective from your area of expertise on something that's very commonly in the consciousness of the mass public.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think what really worked to my advantage is I have very strong political opinions, but I was able, because of my area of expertise, to evaluate all sides objectively and based on science.
Yes.
Which I think part of the reason people really attached to that is because it was one of the unique kind of impartial voices that could support either side.
Right.
So it wasn't like there wasn't polarity created, and it wasn't me pushing my opinion or my agenda. It was like, here's what you're witnessing on television right now, and here's what science tells us is something important to factor into what you're seeing. So it was providing a tool for people in all the noise and all the craziness to really be like, okay, well, let me make an informed decision. Here's somebody who's giving me a scientifically proven tool to either affirm my assumption or challenge me.
Right.
And it's not because they're calling me a jerk and pointing at me. It's because there's actually some sort of scientific basis as to why I'm processing this information in this event in the way that I am. Mm-hmm.
Did you get any pushback on that, even though you were presenting scientifically based? I
did, because it's politics, and people you can't fix stupid, like if somebody's going to dig their heels in, and we as humans have a very strong tendency to work under confirmation bias. Yes. So we have our opinion based on whatever. And then we only choose to collect or hang on to the pieces of evidence that support our opinion, because then we aren't challenged, and we don't have to think, and we don't have to, like, God forbid, change or retract or not scream what we're screaming as loudly from the rooftops anymore because someone actually made a valid point. So I had pushback on that. Like, the first segment I did was in the primaries. I did political analysis around the primaries, and it started with the Post, and then it got picked up by the media. And even keeping it completely apolitical and completely science-based, I was still afraid somebody was like going to burn my house down. Right. Because people are freaking crazy.
Yeah.
And they don't like credible science-based evaluation of things that they just want to talk about opinions around.
Oh, I think we've seen that maybe.
Right. So, and honestly, and I had a couple people challenge me. It was primarily respectful. And so I was lucky. Like, I feel like I was lucky, but I also felt fine putting out what I was putting out because it was credible and it was science-based, and I could back up anything that someone would refute based on opinion, I could prove with fact. Yeah. And so that was kind of my guiding, my compass, and how I was presenting and how I was showing up was just to keep everything science-based on both sides or all sides of the equation, and then let people argue with science if they didn't like what they had what I had to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So how has that then grown into other things for you?
Well, it taught me a lesson that staying topical benefited me. So I did other things, like during the Rio Olympics when the Ryan Lochte incident happened and his response to that. And so I just partnered with another expert who does statement analysis and forensic interviewing, and he did the verbal breakdown and I did the nonverbal, and both sets of science pointed to the same conclusion, which then later came out to be, yes, parts of the stories were fabricated and it didn't happen the way. Well, we already knew it because science told us that was the case. So and that's just one example. And I'm not an ambulance chaser, so I'm not farming the news to look just for controversy. But if there's something that speaks to me that I feel like I can contribute in an informational and valid way to people's point of view, then I'll jump into the conversation. And part of it, honestly, is self-serving, because then it gets people to be like, oh, well, who is she and what does she do? And but it's always about, I come at it from a point of how can I add value to this person or this situation or this conversation. And then if people connect with that, then great.
Right.
And if they don't, then it's good for me to practice writing, or doing videos or however the format is.
That is the win-win of it all, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's been fun because those things now have built, talking to content creation and things that has helped to build my library of how people are forming their first impression about me. Because a lot of times they don't meet me first or see me speak. They find me on LinkedIn or they find me on Facebook, or they're being introduced to me in a digital or written format.
Right.
With the picture. So even how you're making your first impression when it's not you in physical space is really, really important to how people are going to form their opinion about your credibility.
So, and just speaking to that, I have to mention one thing, because I went on your website last night because I was trying to, get all of my stuff together in advance and get I'm like, oh,
you're such a good podcast host. You do research and have context.
I'm going to need Lisa's headshot for the podcast episode. I'll just go on her website. And God love you, it was right there on the front page and I could just download it. And I was like, oh, why doesn't everybody?
I would love to take credit for that. That's my marketing partner, Adam Parsons. That's all him. He has decided to make me easily consumable.
Thank you, Adam.
And I have just surrendered to his process. And I'm like, yeah, tell me what you need me to do. And then amaze me and razzle dazzle. It looks and functions how I need it to.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I was like, oh, there you are, adding value, because I didn't have to go digging around. I didn't have to email you for it. I just, oh, boom, there it is. Done. I have what I need. Thank you, Lisa. We'll chat some more.
Right. Yay. Well,
yeah,
I historically will strategically be a pain in the ass on purpose, but for people like you, I try to throw you a bone once in a while.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, something else that I want to talk about that I think has been, I'm aware of it because of you, but I've seen it come up in my Facebook feed a couple times. RBF. Yeah. I know it's one of your favorites.
It is. And it's funny because a television program actually came to me and said, will you come on and talk about RBF? I had pitched it as one of the things I could do a year ago, and then they had me come on to do some other stuff. But the fact that some random day they're sitting at a production meeting and they're like, hey, I think tomorrow's a good time to bring the body language girl back in to talk about, resting bitch face. Let's fire that up. That email, you could have knocked me over with a feather. I'm like, Janine, I love you so hard right now. Their producer's the best. And yeah, it's a fun topic. And it's one of those things where people can really be affronted just by how they default appear, right? So you get told all the time if you have resting bitch face, which really is just kind of a default facial expression that is perceived as being angry or disengaged or, bitchy. Mm-hmm. Thus the name, just the moniker. And it's not something that it's just really how our muscular structure works in our face. And some people have brows that are closer together or darker or knit down a little bit. And it just naturally their default facial expression, they're not intending for it to be, but it's being perceived on the other side of their face
Mm-hmm.
as them being disenchanted in some way. And so people who have a propensity to default into that look, oh, are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you should smile more, which is like the worst, like most condescending, like just set the room on fire comment you can make to somebody who is intending to be pleasant and who gets tired of having someone else's perception put on them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very sympathetic. Like my default, like not strategic facial expression is not great. Like my daughter takes videos and pictures of me all the time when I'm not looking, like standing in line in the grocery store. And I'm like, oh, that is not my face. Yeah, but it's something that now that I know better, do better. Like it's a common theme in my life. So, and it's really one of those things where for me, it's especially if I'm on TV and you're kind of waiting for your turn and you're looking at the host, like I'm always aware of what is my face saying right now. Mm-hmm. Like I kind of have a default that I've practiced, like just practice in the mirror, finding a comfortable, pleasant facial expression, if that's how you want to be perceived, and just knowing what it feels like and sliding into that when you need to, in that downtime, in that pause time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the whole RBF conversation. I think because like I remember being at work back, in the corporate days, and like if I'm sitting there thinking about something, like I'm not smiling. I'm like processing.
Right.
And I'm not thinking about, do I have a smile on my face so that everyone around me feels comfortable?
Right. And it's not about showing up false or plastering, fake happy, because fake happy is always perceived as off. Like people read fake happy really easily and accurately. And instead of being like, then you've taken people out of the opportunity to feel neutral about you into feeling like suspicious about you or like not liking you or feeling like you're not authentic.
Right.
So you've just made an uphill battle, which you didn't even mean to. You were just trying to not have RBF. And then all of a sudden you slide into another problem.
God, there's so much to think about.
It's the perception thing, right? Like we all have these subconscious evaluators that we use to assess threat. Historically, like caveman days, it was like, are you going to hurt me or are we going to party? Like we didn't really know. And so we've kind of carried that instinctually through the generations. And now we evaluate it for friend, threat, or neutral. Like that's how people land with you in the first 7 seconds of meeting you before you even open your mouth normally.
Right.
Think about where you're seen for the first time. It could be in the parking lot. It could be in a waiting area. It could be in a restaurant. It could be with your face in your phone. Where are people forming that first 7 seconds of interaction with you to decide, yeah, you're chill, you're cool, we're friends, or you might stuff me in the trunk later, or to completely be like unaware of you, which is the worst. Like I would rather have somebody think I'm a threat and then win them over than to like not even be on their radar. Like to have an interaction where they walk away and they don't even know I was in their space. That's terrifying to me.
Yeah. Nobody wants to, like and I'm sure
you don't want to be the gray space. Yeah.
I'm sure I do. But now, great. That's one more thing for me to be aware of. Thank you, Lisa.
Awareness is the first step to solutions.
Oh, God. I feel like I have such a long way to go.
No, you're already awesome. And a lot of this we do, like, I think most people's tendencies as decent, high functioning human beings is to make other people feel seen, heard, and valued. Like that's the hallmark to happiness. If we could communicate in a way that makes the people on the other side of our face feel seen, heard, and valued, 90% of the world's problems would instantly go away.
Completely.
Because crime happens and dysfunction happens and war happens and conflict happens when people feel like they have to fight to be seen, heard, or valued. So if you could alleviate that and just show up ready to receive people that way, conflict's gone. It's neutralized.
Brilliant.
So that's my plan for world peace. That's why I have to get to these 100,000s and millions of people.
Yes. Well, and it's like my notes are over here, but it's like you have,
I'm reading your body language to tell me what question you're going to ask next. I'm totally not. That's complete crap. I wish I could. I wish it told me that specifically, but nah.
Or maybe we just hang out enough.
Or we talk a lot and I kind of know where things go.
Yeah. So speaking of growing that audience and
Yes.
reaching all of those people,
Yes.
you have we've known each other maybe a year, roughly, probably. Thank you to our friend Andre Vaughn for connecting us.
Homie Andre did us right.
He did.
He's like, you've got to, and Chatham Tap Wings. Those two things will make your life better. And he was right on both accounts.
He was.
Yeah.
So much love to our good friend Andre. I can't
Whose
wait for
voice
him
is
to
like
listen.
butter.
Yeah. I can't wait for him to hear this.
I know. He's awesome.
But in that year since I've known you, like, I've seen this shift and you are on fire. And it feels like you're just so far ahead of where you were last year. But I feel like some of that has come from the content that you've been creating.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, there's been a couple of factors, and I just had this conversation with our mutual friend Jennifer last night. It was like a 1 year anniversary, like a friend anniversary of another friend of ours that we had met at this particular event, and it's just one of those things where you're just like, man, how has it only been a year?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how different does your life look in 365 days?
Yeah.
Just think of where you've been, who you've met, what you've created, what the directions you've had, the clarity that's come, the, things you've tripped over.
Because what shifted?
It's only been a year. I'll tell you. So what shifted for me is, and we'll get a little philosophical here if it's
right
okay,
on.
because so what shifted for me is when I had major creativity blocks around myself. I could help other people create. I could help them create courses. I could help them run businesses. I could help them bring the things in their head to the world and add value. And I couldn't do it for myself. And I joke that my Google Docs is like a graveyard of ideas past, because it's like all these great things I'd be fired up to start, or like the whiteboard is my jam.
Right.
Like, we've had some pretty amazing whiteboard sessions, and the whiteboard is my jam, but then I'm all excited about it and I feel confident that I can do it. And the more I build, the more I doubt and the more I question, and then I just stop.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no, this isn't right. It's like, it was right when it was right. Like, inspiration was, I'm questioning inspiration. Mm-hmm. And there's no more valid force in the universe, I think, than creativity, because it's not, I'm not in charge of that. That is something that comes to interact with me. But I didn't understand that at the time, right? I was taking ownership. I have to carry the weight of taking something that's never been made and bringing it to life and making it a thing. And it was like this huge burden. And I just cracked under pressure. I mean, to be honest with you, it was like, who am I, again, worth? Are you seeing some things here? I've done a lot of work this year. But then I was like, who am I to create this? Who am I to bring this in? And then I did some work with a coach, Laura Palmer, who does a system called Bridge Gnosis, where you really get into that subconscious. You start unpacking your subconscious limiting beliefs and your patterns, and you start getting rid of what, and those things served you. Like, when you're in school and you have to play by somebody else's rules and you're evaluated on certain criteria and performance equals an A, those things serve us then. But then when you get out of an adult, it's like outdated software. Like, how frustrating is it to work on a computer that's running like Windows 2? Right? Like, kill me now. And running on dial-up. Like, so that's essentially what we do subconsciously, is we get in this pattern. And then even though there's better options and better thoughts and better things to serve us, we don't know how to upgrade our mental software.
Makes
and a lot
sense.
of it is subconscious, and it's like addiction, right? You would stop if you could, but there's like something bigger than you going on. So it's really just being humble and getting over yourself to realize, okay, there's something, I know I want to do it differently, and I keep reverting back to these old things that aren't serving me. So I need to bring somebody in that can help me clear this junk out. Right. So it's like cleaning out the closet. And that happened not only with Laura, but with a couple other coaches that I've been lucky enough to work with, to get someone else's perspective on the things I can't see about myself. Because we all have those blind spots, or we all have those things that feel really comfortable to us, even if they're wrong and even if they don't work. And that's where we want to stay, even if it doesn't, even if it's not productive, even if it's if it's the one thing standing between where we want to be and where we are, it's ourselves, and we won't get out of the way.
Yeah. We're horrible.
So I had to really reach like that frustration point of like, I cannot make one more thing for somebody else until I make something for me. But then I had to realize my worth. And the biggest thing, the secret to all of it, was really what Liz Gilbert talks about in Big Magic, is knowing that creativity is its own force, and it's divine inspired, and it's its own thing. And all you have to do is show up and invite it to come work with you and to come play with you and have fun. And once I realized everything I want to do is already in existence, I just have to invite creativity in and be a conduit, a channel, or a tool for that to come into physical form.
Mm-hmm.
It was like that weight was lifted, and I have created more content in the last quarter than I did in the last year.
Thank you, Liz Gilbert.
Yes.
And yeah, if you haven't read that book, Big Magic, as soon as you're done listening to this episode,
go order it and get like 3 extra copies, because then you're going to love it so much. You're going to want every other frustrated creative person you know to also then know what you know.
Yeah, because it did. I read that and I was like, a huge weight just lifted.
Right. We don't create anything. We just co-create with the universe. And who, like, of all the partners you could have, like, I've been lucky to have some amazing partners on projects, but it's a freaking universe. Yeah. Like, why would you even stress about making something when you're co-creating with the universe?
Yeah.
Like, game over. It's going to be awesome. Period. The end. All you have to do is show up. You still have to show up. You still have to make space.
And joyfully do the work. You still have to invite
it and joyfully do the work, as your amazing meditation track reminds us. So you have a role. It's not going to force itself on you. You know, it's not like a bad Tinder date. Like, you have the option to say no and walk away, but you have to invite it in, and then you have to choose, and you have to do it in a timely manner. You can't bullshit yourself and throw up roadblocks and, I'll get to it or I'll do it then. Right. No, it's like inspiration and creativity knocks, and you better be at your desk or in your studio or wherever you create, and you better be like, yes, you are priority. I will work with you, or it will go find someone else to play with.
Yeah, I think that kind of scared me.
It's a little bit. Oh, that was like a huge like snap to attention moment to me. I was like, yeah, okay, I get it. Like, this is priority. And it really was priority. Like, it's what should have been priority if I could quit making excuses as to why I couldn't execute on anything.
Right. Stupid excuses.
I know. I'm so lame sometimes.
So let's talk about the content that you have been creating since this revelation. So I've noticed lots of Facebook Lives.
Yeah.
But what I really want to talk about is the podcast, because your area of expertise as body language is a very visual medium. So why the hell would you want to make a podcast, Lisa Mitchell?
Well, because body language is a tool. It's not a standalone solution. Mm-hmm. So you have to have an awareness, and you have to have an intention around communications in general before body language can be deployed effectively. Right?
That makes sense.
You have to understand what outcome you want before you know how to use your nonverbal cues to move you towards it. So if you haven't even done the work to be intentional and to think about who you're showing up in as a room and what your truths are, your body language, you're going to create a character?
Yeah.
You know, because you can use it to influence and you can use it to manipulate. And there's some not great ways to use the tools that I train, which I never encourage. It's always use your powers for good and not evil. But there's ways you can do it. But if you haven't done the work to understand the broader realm of communications and the broader realm of your identity, it's all for naught.
Right.
You can Band-Aid it, right? You can bullshit your way through a meeting or a pitch or something with good body language, but eventually you're going to be found out. So why not back it up a step and really say, yes, you're going to learn a skill. You're going to know how to show up in a room this way, but let's talk about the why. Like, what's your goal? What's the intention? Who are the players? What filters are they looking through? You know, set yourself up for success. You got to have some context around it. I can teach you skills all day, but if you don't have a broader compass to guide you, you're going to essentially be throwing darts with a blindfold on anyways. Mm-hmm. You know, some people will pick you up right. Some people won't, but how do you know if it's right or not? Because you don't even know what your end game is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So is podcasting just that vehicle for you to take a deeper dive into those conversations?
It is. Like the whole first season of Shiny Things is focused around digital dating. which is not really my core. Like
Yeah.
I do corporate training. I'm teaching leadership and management and interpersonal communication, but there's so many strong correlations between how we relate in the personal space and how that translates and how we show up in a business space. I'm finding that although my focus and my theme is digital dating, there's so much overlap. Like every episode at some point has come back to equating it to making a pitch or equating it to evaluating a situation or equating it to a performance appraisal or, like there's some interrelated concept, and the science is the same. It's the application is different, but the application isn't that different. Like you're still trying to show up clued in and you're still trying to decode other people. And that's ultimately through whatever context you find yourself doing that, that's really where you get an edge.
Yes. What have you learned about yourself since starting the podcast?
Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother episode. Are you freaking kidding me right now? Well, so one thing that I love, like the happy side effect, is that I went into creating the podcast as a service mindset. Like, how can I help other people figure this out? And the beautiful part of it is that I have, by default, had many great revelations. And just by having these conversations, like I kind of, I plan and I script and I have an idea of how the conversation can go. But in every case that I've done so far, like the conversation has gone somewhere I didn't intend it to. And it's been beautiful. Like that's the magic, right? It's just two people telling stories and sharing life and being, but it's interesting because I'm kind of, contrary to my profession, I'm kind of a closed off person. Like I don't open up a whole lot right away very easily, especially in dating and interpersonal relationships. Like I'm kind of like, again, it's judgment and worth and blah, 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 all that crap I'm still dragging around. But it's allowed me to like, I just commit at the beginning of every episode that I'm going to really just show up and I'm going to be vulnerable, and wherever the conversation goes and whatever disclosure or sharing or story makes sense to add value to the conversation, that I'm going to be open. Like I'm going to just give it, and I'm not going to worry about judgment. And I'm not going to, I mean, my mom can listen to it. People I date can listen to it. Like I know that by doing that there's exposure, right? There's vulnerability, there's exposure. But I don't think it works any other way. I don't think it works if you come in like, the phrase I use is shiny plastic, right? Because there's a lot of people that are shiny plastic that run, the event circuit and the conference circuit and the run podcast, and they put on their podcaster voice, and their hair is perfectly curled and their lip gloss is perfectly applied, and just they're just here to just share information with their people to help them know how to be their best selves, but then like never disclose anything themselves.
Yeah.
What is that about? Like how that's not a conversation.
That's no fun.
No, it's like I see the role as a host as like, you're just the other side of the conversation. Like you kind of keep the wheels on and a little bit of guidance and make sure, the technical specs are working and everything's cool and it's high quality. But then you just let the conversation flow around the structure that you've provided. But it's not like, I don't know. My definition of interviewing is different. Like, I don't think you ask questions and get answers. I think you just talk and things are revealed.
Yes.
And so that's kind of the groove I've fallen into. And the guests I've had on have been great. And it's been a surprise to me because some of the guests I know are super credible and highly revered and love what they do, but I don't really like know them on a personal level. So it does kind of have that first date vibe a little bit,
totally. Yeah.
Where you're kind of like, you start out a little more formal and by the end you're like making out in the parking lot because you just love each other so much and vibe so hard on each other.
That, but you're so right.
So I've noticed just in the episodes that I've done that it starts out, but then the tone, like the warmth and the appreciation, I think, for each other's stories really by the end is like, let's go grab a beer, homegirl, it's kind of got that vibe. And that's what I love. Like, I can't wait to just keep doing it because it's that many more people that people that I casually know or know the persona. Like then we get to sit down and talk and chat and just share life a little bit, which I think is really cool.
I think that's the fun piece of it. I think if you don't show up willing to have that vulnerability, and because I don't know why, but I have no problem talking about like the struggles I have, especially like with the business and just sharing like, hey, I feel like my whole vibe this year has switched from like, oh, I probably need to be seen as the expert at this to I am like the anti-expert because shit changes so fast that I think my superpower gift is this curiosity. Like, so how can I learn that and incorporate that into what I'm doing?
Right.
And you guys can just come along with me while I figure it out, and I'll make these crazy tutorial videos and I'll chat at you from my bathroom and, or pick up the ukulele and play songs from the lanai if I'm on vacation or,
right.
which I just did. And like, just share all that, the real stuff. Cause I'm like, it's hard to tell yourself or set that expectation that you always have to be the expert. I'm like, I'm not going to be that girl.
Well, and here's the thing. People don't want you to be that girl because we like people that are like us.
Yeah.
And the vast majority, the people that I want to work with are not the super polished, highly media trained, persona wearing portion of the population.
Yeah.
Those are not the people that I want to work with. Those are not the people that I can help, that I can have maximum impact with. The people I can help are the people who are chasing dreams and trying to level up and really wanting to clue in and be aware and want to show up and want to treat people in a way that makes them feel like they matter. Like these are the executives and the managers and people that want to truly, they want to lead from a point of having earned the right.
Yes.
And you earn the right to lead by making people feel seen, heard, and valued, and by showing warmth. And a lot of the work I do with executives is, and a lot of the executives I work with are kind of middle-aged, very traditional, formally educated men, and who have been taught that like feelings are bad. And leaders, if you show feelings as a leader, you're weak. And so they stick to the script. They talk in bullet points. They lean on their credentials. They're very, very high on competence. And that's all you ever see or hear from them.
Yeah.
And so charisma by definition is warmth plus competence. And if you forget the warmth, you're hurting yourself.
Yeah.
And the warmth doesn't have to be, oversharing or telling every sob story or whatever. The warmth is just let them see the man or woman behind the curtain a little bit. Relate to them on a scale of like something that you were really lit up by or something that you were really touched by or somebody that impacted you, like sharing an impact story of how something really like struck you a certain way. And they're like, oh, so they're not a robot. Like there's actually a heartbeat behind that, impeccable resume. And there's such this fear of like, well, if I tell a story,
right.
If I show any warmth, then I'm going to be weak. And it's like, no. Like warmth builds credibility and builds charisma, and warmth helps people feel like you, which makes them like you more.
Exactly.
Because we like people like us. And most normal people have stories and have emotions and are touched by things and have struggles. And they want to know that the person that they're choosing to follow gets all that. Because life gets messy for them sometimes. And they want somebody that they feel like is going to not punish them for that or can't relate to that, but somebody that's going to be able to be empathetic and give them space to move through that. So that's really that's the biggest leadership key is just let the warmth in, share yourself a little bit, bring people. I equate it to, it's a beautiful sunshiny day and you pull up in your convertible and it's shiny and beautiful and brand new, and you pull up to somebody and you yell like bullet points at them about things you've accomplished, and then you drive off. And they're standing there like, well, okay, he's got an impressive resume, but asshole, like you're, or you can pull up beside them and tell them to jump in and tell them to pick their favorite radio station and then share with them this awesome experience that you have, which still shows your competence and still shows your accomplishments, and then drop them back off, be like, man, it was so cool. Like, thanks so much for taking the ride with me.
Yeah.
Like, how do you think that person standing there What do you think their experience of that interaction is?
Oh my God, I never in a million years would have thought of that way.
But so many people drive by and shout bullet points. Mm-hmm. I've done this, I've done this, I've done that. They're like, what the? Yeah, you've done that, but there's other ways through storytelling and through bringing people in that you can convey those accomplishments and those competencies. But then have an experience around that lets them see warmth and brings them into the story.
Yeah, I think, I don't know what it is, like over the course of the last year, I feel like I've become much more aware of actually creating that experience.
Right. You ask people to jump in and go for a ride and pick the radio station and chill and ask about them. Yeah. Novel concept, right? Engagement.
Who knew?
Yeah. So it's kind of just how do you want people to feel after they've interacted with you? Do you want them to be the person that got bullet points shouted at them, or do you want them to be the person who just got to take a sunshiny, awesome music-filled ride and learn about you a little bit?
I want to be that person.
Right. I want to be that person in the car and on this and that gets dropped off. You know, I want to go for a ride, but I want to take people on those rides too. So it's kind of like you need to be intentional. You need to decide ahead of time how you'd like people to feel about you. Like if you could meet somebody for the first time and somebody else walks up when you leave and says, you know, how would you describe her or him in 3 words? What 3 words would you want people to use to describe you? Mm-hmm. And you need to know that ahead of time. You don't want to leave that to chance.
Right. You know, it's really funny because that got me thinking about the first time that we met and you showed up and you had shingles and you're like, I almost bailed on this. And I'm so glad.
Oh my gosh. That was so that was like almost a year. That was a year ago, February.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it has been just a year.
I'm so glad that you were willing to like not be perfect.
Yeah, that was not my finest hour for sure.
But show up, you're like, I've got shingles and...
Well, and you know I got shingles because I had started doing the self-discovery and had done EFT tapping around some sensitive topics and it like fired my... like I was trying to change for the better and then I got shingles.
But then I was like, well, Then I was just like immediately, well, I love this girl because she's going to show up.
I'm like, don't look on that. You can look on the right side of my face. Don't look at the left side.
But then you shared the story of why you had them. And I was like, well, yeah, she's my people because if I started doing that stuff, I would probably have the same reaction. So just sharing that vulnerability was huge. And now here we sit a year later and you're completely kicking ass and you have your podcast and now you're a guest on my podcast. And I feel like all's pretty right in the world.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And I think, you know, I had to really, I've always struggled with insecurity and I've always been very afraid of what other people thought about me. Mm-hmm. And at some point in the last year more so than ever, I've just gotten over myself. Like I used to be terrified to do a video because that's forever. Right. And people will see it and then they'll judge me and they'll critique me and it has to be perfect and it has to be polished and it has to follow this formula. And because of all of that, because of the fear of judgment, I created nothing. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Who benefits from that?
Right.
Like, I wish I could get back some of those ideas that I had that I talked myself out of, that I couldn't get over myself. Oh, I didn't do my hair today, or I can't FaceTime live because I don't have lip gloss on. You know, screw that stuff. Like, so for whatever reason, by the grace of God, like I now have released my fear of judgment in that. And I know people still have opinions about me, and I know I still look crazy sometimes, and I'm okay. Like, I may not be the best fit for you and that's cool. You're probably not the best client for me either. Like if you can't appreciate me, you know, jumping on Skype with my wet hair in a bun and no makeup on, but I'm honoring our appointment, you know, if my morning got tweaked, then we probably aren't going to want to keep working together anyways, because my life, like stuff happens in my life sometimes. Yeah. I will show up for you. I will honor that commitment, but it might not always be pretty. I'm not a shiny plastic. Yeah. That doesn't mean I don't try to, do try to show up the way I want to for sure. But if you can't offer people the grace to be who they are, then we're not going to work together very long. Because I can't roll with that, you know?
Well, and that's why I forced myself into doing like the whole Facebook Live and doing the live from the loo thing, because I had such an issue with feeling like I had to be perfect every time I went out and played a song
and had to be blah. Yeah.
Couldn't make a mistake. And I was like, you know what? If I force myself, it's going to force me to be better before I even start, number one. But God forbid if I hit a wrong chord or maybe end up a little flat on a note. Like, it is not the end of the world. And I think being willing to share that it's been the most ridiculous thing that people are like, they tune in and they watch them and then they share them. I'm like, who knew that sitting in my bathroom singing songs would turn into a thing?
It's a thing. It's totally a thing. I'm like, oh, Jen's on.
And like, as you and I were talking before, and everyone will hear eventually down the road, because that has turned into like a thing.
Yes, like a big, like giant beneficial revenue generating, change the world, bring people together thing.
Yeah. And now I'm even more excited because I got over myself and thought, I'm going to put it out there.
Being intentional and getting over yourself. If there's nothing else that people take away from this time together, it's like, be intentional. Think about how you're showing up in a room and get over yourself and just get in that room. You know, like don't stand outside the door being prepared. Like walk in and engage and just show up. It's so funny. Like we judge ourselves so much more harshly than anyone else does. And overwhelmingly, people want to like you and they want to help you. Mm-hmm. And they'll give you so much grace if you just own it. You know, one of the tricks I use when I speak, and it's a trick only in regards to me, to setting the comfort level for me, is I start out by fairly quickly in the first minute or so calling out what I know everyone's thinking in the room and just putting it out there. Like, yeah, I'm almost 6 foot tall. I am a freakishly tall woman, you know, or whatever the context is. It's like if I'm in a room full of nothing but men, it's like, yeah, I know I'm not your normal demographic. Yeah. You know, or I'm not wearing the same thing you're used to seeing at these events, you know, just whatever it is to like, just get it. Cause they're already thinking it. Right. And I don't care. Yeah. Like I know, you know, and so why don't we just all know? And then you can come along with me for the rest of the program, you know? So it's one of those things where it's like, and people are like, oh, okay. Like she's self-aware. She's pretty fun. Mm-hmm. This is going to be okay. And then they buy in and you disarm them, because if you don't, then they get stuck on that thing that they think you don't know. Right. But you really know it. So it's just like, let's just put it all out there and get on with it.
And you know what? I think that's where we're going to wrap this up. Yeah. That just feels like
that's like the little crescendo and the exclamation point, and off we go.
Yeah. There you have it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lisa Mitchell.
Hey, thanks for having me.
See why I was so excited to have Lisa on the show? I'm always inspired and feel pushed a little out of my comfort zone whenever we hang out. I hope you learned as much from this conversation as I did. So here are my 3 big start doing these right now takeaways. Number 1, get myself mentally prepared for the outcome I want to create before I go into a meeting, and present myself confidently from the moment I pull into the parking lot. Number 2, create better interactions with people so that they feel seen, heard, and valued. I can really up my game here. I can do a better job of this in real face-to-face interactions and on social media by leaving more detailed comments or just saying thank you if someone shared some piece of content that inspired or moved me to take action. And number 3, I've got to create that right along in the convertible experience when I engage with someone, and not just drive up, shout some bullet points, and drive off. I'd love it if you would share your big takeaways from this episode with me. You can tweet me at BrassyBroadJen with 1 N, or leave a comment on the Brassy Broadcast Facebook page. Now do someone in your world a solid and share this episode with them. And we'll catch up next week. Until then, get out in the world and do some good.